Hello Internet, Seth Skorikowski, and today we'll be taking a look at the classic AD&D adventure, The Secret of Bone Hill. Written by Lynn Lakofka and published by TSR in 1981 as the first in their Lindor Isles series. Now, this video is a redo. I originally reviewed this scenario 7 years ago, January 2017, and while a popular video, it was also very, very rough. My equipment was terrible, and I hadn't figured out my review style yet, so like with many of my other earlier videos, I've archived the original, and I'm now going to do it a lot better and more thoroughly because this is a module that I really love. The original review was before you hired me on full time, so this video was already much better. I first played this module as a player in 1991, and then years later I converted it over to 5th edition, and we played it out over the course of 2015, though with a lot of additional stuff, which I'll be going into that. Though I will say that converting it into 5e was far more than a simple conversion of stats. Many of the spells and the items and the monsters are just so different in the new edition that Dungeon Masters are going to need to change up the encounters in order to keep them the difficulty that they're intended to be for the current edition or whichever edition it is that you're running. And while yes, you can find battered copies like this on the used market, you can pick up new PDFs and print-on-demand versions from DriveThruRPG, which I find it great that old adventures like this are still available and just haven't been lost to time. The adventure itself is pretty short, just 32 pages long, but they are jam-packed. Also, it's less of an adventure module and more of a sandbox campaign setting, covering a large area, about 450 square miles, with a good assortment of terrain, and we also get the coastal village of Restinford, which is a great place with lots of great NPCs and a lot of great stuff to it. It provides us with several separate adventures, and it is simply amazing that they were able to cram all this stuff in a 32-page adventure. It was very ambitious for them to do at the time, and I just find this module brilliant. It's one of my all-time favorites. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer my criticisms, my praises, and several Game Master suggestions as a Dungeon Master who has successfully run this adventure. And I'm Jack the NPC. I'm here to give it to you from a player's side of things as I get to revisit the town that I call home and recount the time that we built an orphanage for monsters whose parents that we murdered. But before we go any further, I must warn you that there will be spoilers. So any players in the audience, please stop here. But send your Dungeon Masters this way to see about running The Secret of Bone Hill for you. But if you keep going and you spoil yourself, you'll be fed to the Hydra. Okay, Dungeon Masters, let's get this thing started. This redo has been a long time in the making. I am really late with this one. I should have been doing this one quite a while ago. Now, as I said, the bulk of the module is simply setting. The overland map for it is huge. However, the simple black and white of it with the hex measurements and the topography lines makes this pretty difficult to read. So when I last ran this, I fixed it up with a little bit of Photoshop, making it much more user-friendly. The only change that I made from the original is I removed the trail leading up to the top of Bone Hill as well as the ruins atop that. That way my players could discover all that on their own versus just getting the map and seeing it right there. And Dungeon Masters, definitely give your players a copy of this map each for them to fill out and look at all the places they've been and all the places that they want to go. Maybe after the characters have already visited the town and purchased a copy for themselves. Any Dungeon Masters out there who are wanting to use a copy of my map, they can download that as well as any other assets that I made down at the link in the video description below. Please, by all means, use them and have fun with them. The coastal village of Restinford is the central feature, and for that we also get a map with key locations numbered. Once again, I'm not a huge fan of this map. However, because it is such an old and well-loved module, with a little internet searching you can find better versions, including a side view, more of a picture really, and color versions as well. My favorite version is a French one, so I took that map and I changed it to English and whited out the location key, replacing them with blanks. That way my players would have to explore the village and fill in all the locations themselves as they went through it. Again, you can download that at the video and the link in the description below if you would like a copy of that. We also receive maps for 3 different taverns in town, as well as one for the magician Peltar's home. There is also a map of the Baron's castle, including the dungeon beneath. The final rest Restinford map is the burnout guard station with a secret dungeon beneath it, where the players are going to fight giant rats and some skeletons and some ghouls. Now, one thing that I added last time that I ran this is our rogue, while searching around the town after they'd arrived there, found an old and a faded mark in the stonework under one of the docks, like a thief mark, and which he used that to find the secret door that led to 10A. I thought that was a nice addition because there seems to be some sort of a Thieves Guild lair or something that was underneath there, so I figured that's a good way that the people that belonged to that guild long ago would be able to let people know that this is their territory and as a way of finding them. And even though it's been faded with time, any current characters looking for it will be able to find it. This god station and dungeon is our favorite adventure in this entire module, and players are probably going to recognize that this is a pretty sweet place and want to keep it for themselves to turn it their new stronghold. So Dungeon Masters, be prepared for your players to try to keep this place for themselves or see what it takes for them to purchase it from the Baron, and get ready for them to spend all their ill-gotten gains getting all the sweet furniture and everything to fix it up right. The village has an enormous cast of characters. There are 315 residents to this town, with names and stats for 55 NPCs, 25 of them in the castle alone. And this provides an incredible amount of role-playing opportunity for players. They are able to befriend various members of the town, and you never know which players are going to be drawn to which NPCs, and the different PCs make friends with different NPCs, and kind of each of them gets their favorite, which, to me that's the ideal, that if every character has their own NPC that's kind of their favorite that they met here. Now, one criticism that I have read about the adventure is that all the NPCs are not fleshed out enough with detailed personalities and motivations for each and every one. And, well, yeah, I guess that would be pretty cool to have. Once again, this is a 32-page module. I mean, if this was 80 pages, sure, why not? They got room for that. But I feel that they did an astounding job fitting everything into this book that they did. So I'm not going to criticize the fact that, they didn't put more in with this small page count. Now, another thing that I like about the village is there's a list of over 35 rumors that the players can learn if they roleplay and ask around the village. Now, some of these are true and some of them are not. Now, one area that I disagree with, however, is that zero-level NPCs won't know any rumors, and I feel that every local should know at least one local rumor or local legend around the place. I mean, after all, they live here. However, one detail that I do like is that leveled NPCs have a 10% chance per level of dispelling any false rumors. So the uneducated masses, they might tell the player characters one thing, but then the PCs, they talk to one of the major NPCs that's at least 3rd level or higher, and they can be like, yeah, that's not true at all, and they can give them the true story, or they can just debunk any sort of myth. Now, in addition to the village, there are several other locations where the players can adventure, such as fighting orcs atop Bald Hill. Now, these orcs are said to have a small stone fortress over in the Zerbal Mountains, but other than a brief description of what treasure is inside of it, nothing is really said about this place. Personally, I feel they should add a few orcs to this location. That way, if the player characters venture there, they're going to smuggle a small contingency of orcs, as well as maybe have that location overlooking the river or the road, and that way the orcs there can signal the orcs atop Bald Hill of any caravans or dangers coming through, and maybe the player characters, if they're looking around, they might be able to see or catch glimpses of these signals, like, signal mirrors catching the sun, or maybe torches at night, sort of beacons back and forth. We also have a band of gnolls over in the Pebble Hills, which might attack a convoy or something that the player characters can get sent to rescue any prisoners or recover some stolen goods. And there's also the Church of the Big Gamble, a temple to a gambling god that the player characters can find if they go to the Dwemer Forest. Now, this temple is really, really cool, and it's kind of hidden. The player characters pretty much have to physically explore the forest to just randomly stumble across this to even know it's there. A couple of the rumors in town allude to there being a priest that lives this direction, but there's no real information about the church itself. Now, for whatever reason, and I didn't realize this till I had read this the most recent time before the review, I always thought that this church was relatively new, like it hasn't been there that long, but even if it is, the locals should still know about it. I mean, it's a big stone building, so somebody had to have come in here and built this thing, and the supplies would have come and gone, so the locals should probably know that there was some sort of construction over the hill. Yeah, but there should still be a lot of people coming and going just to visit this place, right? Because it's not just a church, it's a casino. So it is going to be drawing all sorts of people to it. So yeah, while the locals might scorn it as a den of sin and some place that no one would ever visit, even though they're all visiting on Friday night and hoping that nobody notices, you're still going to get a lot of out-of-towners that are coming and going to this place, and they're staying and resting for its inns and taverns, and they're telling big stories about how much money they're going to win, how much money they did win. Maybe even the church sends a couple big winners down there, right, to start telling stories about how much gold they got when they went there and trying to coax some of the locals into paying it a visit. So with that in mind, I suggest that game masters add a dock along the river where barges might stop, maybe different boats come and go, stop and try their luck. Maybe when the player characters initially see this, as they're traveling down the river the first time, they can see this dock being constructed, and then a few months later, there's a lot of boat traffic starts coming and going through and stopping at this dock that's at the woods, and that's because people are going to the temple. Now this is all in addition to the random encounters that the players might have anywhere outside of Restinford itself, so there is no shortage of adventuring that the player characters can have here. Though one thing that I do wish that it had, and I suggest the Dungeon Masters add, is different encounter charts for the various terrains around here. Woods, highway, along the river, up in the mountains. Make each terrain feel unique by having different types of encounters that could be happening there. Now, of course, the final area of interest is Bone Hill itself. There are two layers to this location. First is a band of bugbears occupying the above-ground ruins during the daylight hours, who are led by an evil sorcerer named Telvar. The second is an underground realm of the undead, led by an evil wraith. Now, even undead animals wander the hill at night because there's some sort of kind of an undead power permeating the area. The dungeon itself is full of combat, but really isn't that spectacular, kind of a standard dungeon. It also leaves a couple questions about the remains of a lawful good wizard that's found in one room, as well as 3 beholderkin that are guarding a treasure in another. Now, one addition that I made is to the spectators is that they were positioned above a body. So instead of it just being in this room with all this treasure, I put the remains of some powerful unknown adventurer who was mortally wounded and had locked themselves in here. And as a dying act to keep the evils of Bone Hill from getting his items, he summoned the spectators to guard it. And I feel that adds a bit of a cool element here because there's obviously some story that the player characters discover after the fact. They have to kind of figure out who this was and why they were here. Maybe if they check any rumors before they go to Bone Hill, they could have heard about some brave hero who went up there several years ago and never came back, and how they had this intelligent sword and all this powerful stuff with them, and they weren't able to take Bone Hill. So now the player characters, when they go in this room and they discover the spectators and the body, they know what happened to this hero. Or it could have been the body of some important person who originally lived in the castle when it originally fell long ago, and that can answer the mystery of, whatever happened to them, the captain of the guards, or maybe the original baron there. Bone Hill itself is a very difficult area, and characters who are of the 2nd to 4th level range, which is what the module says that it's for, are very likely going to die if they just go straight here. I wouldn't send a party to this location until you have at least 2 5th level characters in the party. So, Dungeon Masters, you should use the encounters and locations around the area to provide some experience points as well as some, cool magical equipment that the player characters can have before they try tackling Bone Hill, because if they go straight there, it is not going to be a good experience for them. Now, one thing that I do find interesting is while the adventure is designed for player characters between 2nd and 4th level, the recommended number of them is between 2 and 8 player characters, which really gives a wide spread to how powerful this party could possibly be. Maybe it's saying that 8 2nd level PCs or maybe 2 4th level PCs, which either of those parties I feel would be really outmatched if they went to Bone Hill, so I'm not really sure what it's trying to say there. Now, another thing that I do find interesting about this module is 2 of its most prominent illustrations. The woman writing a nightmare on the title page and the color picture of a Hydra on the back cover are not found anywhere inside the adventure itself. There is a rumor about a woman riding a horse with flaming hooves if they ask around town, but it's a false rumor, and there's no mention of a Hydra at all in the adventure, in the module anywhere. Now, gamers being gamers, there is a ton of speculation speculation and rumors as to why that happened, including one where the artist Errol Otis intentionally put a Hydra on the back cover to spite the module because he just didn't like it. Now, maybe that's true, maybe it's not, maybe it was a simple miscommunication, or the Hydra was put in there originally and then it was removed during editing but the cover art was already been called for it. So whatever the reason is, there is no Hydra or lady riding a nightmare. At least not yet. And on that note, now that we've covered what's inside the module, let's discuss what's written between the lines and my personal suggestions for what dungeon masters can elaborate on if they want to get the most out of this adventure. The biggest thing that you'll notice about The Secret of Bone Hill is that there's not an actual plot to it at all. It's simply a location sandbox, meaning that it's really just a bunch of places that the player characters can explore in any order that they like and do whatever they want. Personally, I love that about it. It's one of my big appeals for me, but many dungeon masters, especially newer dungeon masters, might find this a bit overwhelming, preferring a linear module that pretty much walks them through it, where the player characters do this and this and this, and they've got a call to action in order to go on the adventure. Now first, why are the players even in Restinford? So dungeon masters, you want to answer that. And while you can say that, yeah, they grew up here and they're childhood friends, I feel that that takes away from a bit of the exploration and discovery, because the player characters would be starting off knowing a lot of the stuff that's around here already. So I prefer the idea that all the player characters begin this adventure being new to town. That way both the players and the characters get to discover everything together. Now for my game, I had the player characters, they were hired to protect a barge that came from down the river, so they had this little encounter with some bandits along the way that kind of brought them together and injected a little bit of excitement at the very beginning. And then once they arrived, they got paid and the barge went on to a ship and, left the player characters there with, a lot of money in their pocket because they'd completed the job, and now they were kind of wandering around looking for a new job to do. Now, among those things they could do in town would be joining the garrison, joining the abbey, or possibly hoping to apprentice under Peltar the wizard. And maybe that was their motivation for coming here in the first place, and they took a job on a barge or whatnot just to get here, but that's what they want to do once they arrive. There's a few different openings that dungeon masters could try. Maybe they came to Restinford specifically to train under the wizard, or maybe one of the NPCs here is like an old relative that they're visiting or an old friend. Now, shortly after the player characters arrived when I ran this, they learned of a peasant boy that was bitten by a giant rat up near the burned out guard station, and I had him be diseased, and the player characters were trying to heal him and try to get any herbs and whatnot because they didn't have the level yet to cure the disease, and this ended up leading to the guardhouse adventure where the player characters got to explore everything then. Now, the player characters, of course, they wanted to keep this guardhouse once they'd cleared it out, but to do that, they needed to get permission from the Baron. They couldn't just move into this building if they wanted to. They had to get permission and purchase it, or maybe make some sort of arrangement in order to live there. Now, the Baron sold it to them under the condition that all the player characters swore allegiance to him and they joined the town militia, meaning that occasionally they would get called upon to do different shifts or different jobs for the militia. Now, this led to the Baron being able to send the player characters off on various quests, such as he sent them to Bald Hill and he sent them off to the Pebble Hills. I also added several other adventures here, such as the Hydra, as well as the Witch with the Nightmare that the pictures showed. Now, this whole time that they were here, because this is over the course of several months, Bone Hill was not a secret. People knew about it, but they regularly discussed it out in the open. It was more of a whispered subject. Now, the story that I came up with behind it is that the Baron's family once lived in that fortress long ago, many years before the Baron was even born. However, their priest sold his soul to an evil power in order to steal the Baroness for himself. And this is a lot like what's going on with the Abbey, who's slowly turning evil, so I kind of figured this would be a good case of history sort of repeating itself here, which you'll learn more about that once you read the sequel adventure, but just so you know, that is one of the things that the Abbey is trying to do now. So one thing led to another, and the land ended up being corrupted with this priest transforming into the Wraith that now rules the ruins. So the taint of this evil is why there are so many monsters around the area. Some sort of dark force is drawing them there, and it's also what is corrupting the abbot. Maybe it's a way that the evil keeps trying to call in these holy men trying to taint them. Now, other heroes, of course, over the years, they've attempted to rid Restinford of this curse, and one of those attempts was made by Peltor's former master, and he became the undead prisoner that the player characters can find under Bone Hill later on. And you can have an amulet or some other effect that can reveal the dead mentor's identity to make this encounter feel more personal. That way they can go back to Peltar and say say that we have found your master and we have finally laid him to rest. And then you could say that another attempt was made later on by one of Peltar's associates, maybe a wizard that was a little bit better than him when he was training, and they trained under this same master, and that was Telvar, who we later learn is still alive and leading the bugbears in this ruined castle because Bone Hill has corrupted him as well, and it really emphasizes this aspect that people who enter to Bone Hill either die or become tainted by this evil. So when the player characters, they go off to Bone Hill, Peltar and the Baron at first, they forbid it because of this place's reputation, because they fear any sort of repercussions that might happen. Not only what will happen to them, but what the occupants of Bone Hill might do for revenge. But eventually, when you as the Dungeon Master feel that the characters are ready, you can have the Baron or Peltar have a change of heart and tell the player characters that if anyone can do it, you can. So the Baron sends them there to destroy this evil so his family can again claim this castle that is his birthright. And I think this is a good way to keep excited player characters from just rushing off to Bone Hill the moment they get here and before they're ready to really tackle all the threats there, as well as, if you allow them to keep and restore the burnt guardhouse as a base of operations, it gives the player characters a vested interest in this town. They want to make sure the town is safe because this is now where they've chosen they're going to have their base of operations. And so one of the things that I added here is the first thing that they needed to discover was this lost evil temple that the original priest of Bone Hill had visited, which started off this whole thing. So they had to gather various rumors and explore around in order to find out that it was at the bottom of this pond, sort of like a pyramid-shaped diving bell on legs, where they had to swim down and come up underneath it. And then once they had cleansed that place of all the evil and they had recovered some sort of artifact for the Baron, they could safely tackle Bone Hill itself because the evil was going to stop replenishing. The only evil left was the evil that was actually inside Bone Hill, and that was now defeatable. I'd always wondered about that Hellraiser-esque temple that you sent us to, with that pillar of severed heads that were weeping black tears that ran into the water. I'm glad to know that messed up place came out of your imagination and wasn't printed for the public consumption. Now, discovering the temple first meant that they had to deal with a witch who wrote a nightmare, and she was up around the Ready Forest somewhere, and she had some sort of magical minotaur maze that the player characters had to do. I also added a Hydra that was up around the Arog Forest, as well as an abandoned dwarven mine that was deep in the Zerbal Mountains, and a group of dwarves that came to town. They hired the player characters to go to this mine and recover something from there, requiring that the player characters then had to deal with all the goblins that had since moved in there. We also hired those same grateful dwarves to come back to our place in order to reinforce some of the tunnels and expand out some of the rooms that were in that burned out guard station that we had turned into our secret lair. There were two reasons for this. One, they were dwarves, so they were just naturally better at that sort of thing because they had a lot of experience. And two, they were out-of-towners because they had just come into Restinford to go up to that abandoned mine and get that stuff out of it, and they were going to be leaving once they were done. And we didn't want any of the locals to know about our secret lair that we were building underneath the streets. I also added other modules to this adventure. A few miles east up the map, there was the haunted house from the sinister secret of Saltmarsh, another one of my favorite low-level adventures, kind of turning this into the sinister secret of Restinford. Another suggestion that I'll make here is the bugbears. Bugbears occupy the castle up at Bone Hill, and there's a mural that shows them as a long-existing enemy, but they only seem to exist around here up at Bone Hill, or not anywhere else. So add more bugbear encounters around the area, giving them a symbol or something the player characters can find, and they can discover that they belong to Telvar's little army that is amassing here. Now, one idea you could do to do this would be to change the orcs in Bald Hill to bugbears. And if you add the Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh adventure the way I did, you could change the lizardmen who are stockpiling weapons into bugbears as a way to kind of show that the bugbears are trying to amass weapons for some sort of big purpose. And all of this ties the scenarios together into one cohesive story, giving an actual secret to Bone Hill, which that's something that this module actually lacks. Now, one thing that I really do love about this module is an aspect that you really don't see in a lot of scenarios out there and really did influence a lot of my adventure design later on, and that is children. Both the Knoll Camp and the bugbears up in Bone Hill Fortress have families, including children listed on their rosters, which that can lead to an interesting moral dilemma, say when the player characters are clearing all the monsters out of Bone Hill and they kick open a door to a nursery to find a bunch of terrified children huddled underneath one of the mothers who's holding a spear to fend them back, while another mother has a knife and she's ready to kill all her own young before letting these invaders do unspeakable things to her babies. Come on out here, you monsters. Taste my steel and holy crap. Whoa. Hold, please. Guys, Are we the baddies? So many other adventure modules out there have all the monsters in them as being just capable fighting adults, and rarely do we have the helpless and the young and the very old listed among the residents. And it not only adds this level of realism, because of course the monsters who are living there in these places, they're going to have children, of course, and they're also going to get old, but it also forces the player characters to decide what it is they're going to do about that. Which is why all the treasure that we made plundering Bone Hill, we then put towards an orphanage for all those hobgoblins and all the other monsters that we had murdered along the way, giving a good safe place to grow up in and develop some good life skills. Now, of course, they might grow up and come after us for revenge for murdering all their families and all that stuff, but that sounds like a future me problem that I can deal with then. Now, while the adventure is set in the Lindor Isles, Dungeon Masters can place this adventure anywhere they want with no problems. I've never actually set it in the Lindor Isles. Maybe you could do it along an ocean coast or along the shores of a giant lake. There's also some sequels to this adventure. The first L2, The Assassin's Knot, which is one of D&D's first, if not the first, D&D murder mystery adventure. Now, I've only read this and I've never run it, but I do recommend that Dungeon Masters who might think that they would want to run this in the future, consider reading this before they run Secret at Bone Hill. That way they can be sure to set up all the foreshadowing and especially laying the groundwork that's necessary for it, especially establishing rumors of the town Garrotten, which is located 18 miles to the southwest of Restinford and extends down the wilderness map that we get for that adventure. Then there's L3, Deep Dwarven Dell, say that 3 times fast, which was written back in 1979 but wasn't published until 1999 for the game's 25th anniversary. And finally L4, Devil's Spawn, published in 2009 and available for free at the dragonsfoot.org website. So any dungeon masters who think that they might run Secret of Bone Hill might consider picking up those other adventures as well, though they're not necessary if you don't want to do them. Now, criticisms aside, Secret of Bone Hill is a wonderful setting with incredible potential for game masters to make it their own. Again, it is available on DriveThruRPG, links below for that. I have had many wonderful memories from this adventure, so I highly recommend it. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of our stuff, such as game reviews or how-tos, just hit that subscribe button. And if you want to support Seth's channel, consider picking up one of his books and novels, available in print and an audiobook, and who knows, maybe you'll even enjoy one of his weird stories. Till next time, heroes, you have a great day. I still get holiday cards from all those orphans that we set up. Usually it's stuff like, Dear Jack, thank you for the bicycle and the new shoes. One day I hope to drink out of your hollowed out skull as vengeance for you murdering my family. Hope you have a good new year. Man, parenthood is weird.